Hi, welcome to Give Me the Bible, where God's Word speaks for itself. In this video, as we continue to talk about how to have a dialogue of differences, particularly in the context of a religious discussion, we want to talk about the principle of listen more, talk less. Look in James chapter 1 with me. In James chapter 1, we have a principle repeated that really is stated many times in different forms in the Old Testament wisdom literature, particularly in the Proverbs. And since James really is kind of the New Testament version of wisdom literature, he repeats a very important principle, and that is to listen more and talk less. But of course, he puts it in a different way. In James chapter 1, verses 19 and 20, he says, "This you know, my beloved brethren, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger, for the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God." It's very cliche, but it's true, isn't it, that we have two ears and one mouth. And so we should be willing to listen at least twice as much as we talk, and yet that can be so difficult, especially in the context of a religious discussion. That's a very emotionally charged situation. We're talking about beliefs, perhaps, that we've held for a very long time, or things that we've come to believe so strongly that we've made radical changes in our life. And here's a person who's doubting that, or who's questioning that, or insinuating that perhaps we're wrong about those beliefs. And that can really get our blood boiling. I understand how that goes, and I think that's why James says, also be slow to anger, because he knows, and God knows, anger is one of the things that really keeps us from listening more and talking less. And that can certainly be the case when we're talking about religious things. So because I know how hard that is, I want to share with you two things I think will help us to listen more and to talk less. First of all, recognize that you could be wrong. Recognize you could be wrong. Look in Proverbs 14. Proverbs 14 and verse 12. Proverbs 14 and verse 12. Now, I recognize we need to be convicted in our beliefs. If we don't believe that we're right about something, then there really is no reason to believe it. So I get the fact that we need to think that we're right in what we believe, and we need to be firm in that. But at the same time, look what Proverbs 14:12 says. It says, "There is a way which seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death." So despite our convictions about our beliefs, we need to recognize it's possible we could be mistaken. It's possible we could be misled, or we're missing an important piece of the puzzle that is keeping us from understanding a truth of God the way that we should. And if we think that we can't be wrong, if we think that we're absolutely right and it's just impossible to be proven wrong, well, guess what? We're not going to be listening to anybody. We're going to be like the fool in Proverbs 18. Look in Proverbs 18 in verse 2. It says, "A fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind." See, if we think we're right about everything and it's just impossible that we're wrong, we're not going to listen to the other person. We're just going to write them off, and we're just going to want to share everything that we believe and tell them what's right because they're automatically wrong. There's a difference, isn't there, between listening and staying quiet long enough for the other person to shut up so that now we can go and tell them how wrong they are and how right we are. Okay, that's just nonsense. Recognize there's a possibility that we could be mistaken, and that way we'll be open to the possibility of learning something, learning from another person's perspective, really listening to understand the other person, listening more, talking less. And secondly, don't assume you know what the person is going to say. Maybe we've studied at a particular denomination, and here's a person from that denomination, so we've kind of put them in our box, and we already know everything that they believe about every single issue, and so we don't really need to listen because we already know what they're going to say. When that happens, often we're not listening to them. We're just kind of watching their lips move, but what's going on in our minds is we're pre-planning our response, right? We already know what they're going to say, and so we're working out, well, this is what I'm going to say in return. And I've had people do this to me. It is a terrible experience, okay, because I can tell they're not listening. I can tell they don't care about me, and they've already put me in their box, because what happens is once I'm finished explaining my belief to them, then they'll respond to me, but it's like they're talking right past me. It's like they're not even talking to me. They're not even addressing the very things that I brought up in my points. It's because they've assumed that they know me. Every person is unique, all right? Look in Proverbs 20. Proverbs 20, since we're still there, in verse 5, it says, "A plan in the heart of a man is like deep water, but a man of understanding draws it out." Right? People are complex beings. Our minds, our hearts, the things that shape us as we grow up, now, that's all very complex. We cannot put any person in a box and assume that we know who they are. If we can remember those two things, to recognize we could be wrong and to not assume we know what the other person is going to say, that's going to help us to listen more and talk less. I sure hope that that's helpful, and Lord willing, I'll see you in the next video.